Well, thank you very much for being here. We already had your greetings in the beginning of the screening, and you already told us a little something that there is an autobiographical aspect to your film. And of course, I had to be curious, is your family cursed in the same way than the family in the film?
Yeah, I definitely think, with all this thing of the pandemic going around, for people here in Colombia was just like, oh, that is great. Your film is going to be premiere at two festivals at time, and in Mannheim, like a big festival. It's sure that you will go and blah, 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 and somehow start feeling that the film seems like cursed as well, and me as well, because from generations through generations, I've been living like with that curse in my family. And somehow I felt like the line should stop like with me. I feel like I'm not that cursed yet, but I don't know. It's crazy. It's somehow like premiered a film in 2020 that has been a challenging year. So perhaps you can feel like the film is cursed, but as well it's like I feel like somehow I'm releasing that curse through. I mean, showing the film itself in this challenging year. I think is that is like kind of like freeing myself and the film from that curse.
Yeah, you're working and reflecting. I mean, of course, because you're making artwork out of some material where there's some truth and some invention and the creation, and maybe you're letting it go in a way.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that because for me it's impossible to create without connecting with feelings. I mean, I haven't been able to do any like short films or documentary, or in this case my first feature. I haven't that like faculty to totally disconnect like my emotions and feelings from what I do. So I definitely think that it's also a kind of like a personal release with this film.
And there's something very sensual about your film, and for sure, you can sense in the film that there is an observational nature that you're used to observing people and the bodies that move in front of the camera. So there is something, I'm sure, that comes transpires through from your practice with documentaries so far. Did it inform the way you wanted to shoot your first feature?
Yeah, definitely. I strongly believe that the DNA of cinema was actually documentary. I mean, it's the story says, and that is why I've been studying documentary mainly, because somehow that's my start point to get like this approach for fiction film. And definitely, I think I'm obsessed with how we look at each other. I'm obsessed with the first, like very close-ups kind of shots. And obviously, it was also like a challenge for me, especially here in Colombia, because we have a lot of male directors. So usually, female bodies have been seen through a male point of view. And I definitely think that me as a woman, like as a female director, I have kind of like an agreement that idea of getting closer to women's body. And even when you're showing like totally naked bodies, it will never feel like anything different like what you mentioned, like that it's sensual, but it is like it's like an empowerment of female bodies. So I think that definitely that documentary that goes on my veins is part of this film, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. It's sensual, but more in the sense that there is something about the way physical nature can be represented in images and sounds, but it's not sensual in the way that it would want to make sexual objects out of the women portrayed.
Yeah, definitely. As I grew up in a only women family, so I grew up with this idea that naked is not like being naked around your house is not like a taboo. And here, especially in Latin America, we are very warm as well. So we like to touch constantly, like hug each other, like everything is a reason to, to caress ourselves. And I feel that when you are in a family life, that becomes like part of the daily life. So we don't have like that physical barriers like in front of us. So that it's very like natural for us to go to feel that kind of like freedom with our bodies. And I think that was one of the main things that I was actually looking for, like very persistent way in this film.
And there's also something feminist about the way you portray men. I mean, it's a film about a female community for sure, but it's also a film that treats men in a, I think, funny way. That I mean, it's not so funny in the beginning when the father, of course, is violent, but I think it's very funny in the scene in the middle where all of a sudden a man comes in and he wants to dominate this scene where actually everybody around has arranged everything, but he's taking charge of the table.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's the kind of things that makes like a film particular. We nowadays have a lot of films that are very similar to each other, like the same kind of topics, the same kind of treatment. And for me, it was really important not only to tell like my personal story, but also to bring like a perspective. I remember, for example, a film like Persepolis, an
Mhm.
animation film. I think that these kind of films are talking from the inner self and for a cultural behaviors as well. I'm not saying, of course, that all men are bad. I think that will be like a very kind of reductive point of view. But for me, in my case in particular, those are the models I grew up with. Those are the kind of behaviors that we see in, like in a daily basis here. That actually during the pandemic have been like more murders of women than in the last year. I mean, during the 6 months or 8 months we have of pandemic, there have been like a lot of murders of women
Yeah.
here, particularly. So I think that it's not a fact that it is old-fashioned idea. I think that it's important because of that to take that again to our screens. And yeah, I mean, I have a very good relationship with men. So that is not like something. Actually, sometimes I don't feel like very comfortable with the idea of saying myself like a feminist, because at the same time we feel that we as women we have also to struggle because ourselves we have been accepting somehow some of those behaviors. So I think that will be a half to half um, things to work out like together. Yeah, we also grew up with these TV novels, melodramatic reference in television that is very common here. And the idea of this man that comes like a prince and save yourself, and it's going to be the savior, the the protecting figure for the family, that it's still part of our culture. And I
Mhm.
think that the idea of showing that not so seriously on the film, it's part of like, okay, you're living with this kind of idea of the man like a Superman that comes and rescue you from your awful family. But trying to showing that in the film, like not, like as you say, kind of with a bit of humor and a bit of just like putting that on the screen, perhaps will make the viewers to think about those patterns that we have been normalizing.
Well, I think what's very important is that you're not explaining this. The film is very subtle and also very laconic about what it is showing. So it's very much about the presence of what you can see, and the humor comes out of the perspective. And it's not so much about a narrative that explains us what to think now about the man coming to the table.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that somehow the film is trying to make a contract with viewers. Is like I'm showing this first a scene that is obviously explicit violence. So perhaps you can take like a posture of perhaps you can understand the Camila's desire. I think that's one of the main reason for that kind of opening, like very explicit. And somehow the film proposed to the audience, like, okay, let's get into this family and let's be part of them without judging them properly, like as you mentioned, without being so like explicit about judging, but let's go and see how this ladies moves on their daily lives, and somehow I feel like the film is proposing you to be part of that house and that dynamics, and I feel that at some point you kind of forget that there is someone like trying to point it out, because actually, as you mentioning, I was never trying to pointing at something. For me, it became like a portrait of the kind of family and the kind of a cultural um, behavior where I grew up.
Yeah, there are like fragments of an existence, something put together that build a portrait taken out of different situations. I think there's also one kind of little link that you can make to the work of Lucrecia Martel,
Yeah.
who, as I read, I don't know, maybe you can tell us something about it, did support you in some way in the making or developing of the film.
Yeah, when the film earned the development grant from the Colombian Fund, I had the opportunity to get like a whole year advising during the screenwriting process. And I chose Lucrecia at that moment because I felt that obviously she's like a huge reference for a lot of Latin American, especially female directors. But I think what is unique in her is actually that she's not part of the idea of feminist kind of view, exclusively female kind of topics. And that is something really important that she really helped me during the screenwriting process. So we have a lot of working, like, trying to deal with that perfect balance between being part of the feminine world, but at the same time, trying to take like a step back to have kind of a bigger perspective of this daily life I was trying to portray. And it was also great because I feel that she has obviously this Latin American perspective, but at the same time, she's part of the world cinema reference. So for me, it was really rich to have her input during the screenwriting process, definitely.
Well, I'm very happy that you're taking on the stage of the world cinema as well, and that we can show your feature debut in Mannheim just very few days after your world premiere. And thank you very much for your film and for being with us, at least in this virtual way.
Thanks to you. For me, it was really unexpected, but it's also a very, very nice surprise. And it's a very special moment to know that my film is getting somehow a spot in this very, very special festival. And especially because when you create something, yeah, obviously you have in mind like some kind of perfect viewer's idea. It's like, okay, I want to make this film, thinking also for this kind of audience and blah blah blah, and somehow the film itself starts to find its place. And for me it's also magical how the film could be screened in Germany, because at the same time, it's obviously that we have like a geographical distance, but at the same time I think that when we are as a humans able to connect with the emotions and with this kind of different world topics and cultural things that I'm trying to show on the film, I think that it's magic for me, and I really truly appreciate to be part of this selection. That I think that it's also really powerful that female are really strong part of the program as well. So
Yes,
glad for that.
We were
Yeah.
very happy to discover all these films and yours especially. So thank you for being with us.
Thanks to you and thanks to the festival. And I wish that the audience really can enjoy the film somehow.